For the first time in 8 years, women are losing ground when it comes to new board seats. Only roughly 28% of the 431 open board seats at Fortune 500 companies were awarded to women in 2016. That is down from 30% the year before. In today's Walk the Talk segment, where we focus on issues of diversity and inclusion, we bring in Bloomberg reporter Jeff Green from Detroit. So, Jeff, when you look at the numbers here, what surprises you the most?
Well, the fact that you have it going down, I mean, it's been slowing, but there really wasn't an expectation that this was going to backtrack. There's so much focus on it, so much attention. So to see this number go back, it's kind of unexpected to see an actual backtrack at this point in the discussion.
And the backtrack has important implications for how long it'll take for women to reach parity as well.
Yeah, now the Heidrick & Struggles, which did this report, is now saying 2032, and that's their third revision to farther out in the future in as many years. Every time they look at it, first the pace was slowing, and now it's going back. So the parity in the boardroom that everybody's talking about is further and further in the future.
Jeff, is there a self-selection bias going on here as well? Because if people are looking for someone who's been a CEO or been a CFO in the past, then the pool is already narrowed and narrowing according to this data.
Right, and Bonnie Gwynn at Heidrick & Struggles, who does recruiting in this area, pointed out that boards want a CEO or a CFO, and if you look at who those people are, they're overwhelmingly men. The Fortune 500 has 32 women in the CEO position, so if you only want a CEO, you don't have many choices to get a woman for that.
So we talked last week about a similar issue, Jeff, and it was a Harvard study that said if you're one woman among 4 candidates, statistically you've got 0 chance of being chosen. If that becomes 2 out of 4, then actually it's 50-50 because you go from being effectively a token woman to not being. How do we fix this? Well,
you're lucky to be a woman in the candidate pool at all, to be honest. But we have to change attitudes. One of the things that Coco Brown, who helps boards find these candidates, pointed out is if when you survey men, overwhelmingly they're like 25-30% think that this matters, where women are 80 to 90%. So if the men who dominate the boards and the decision-making process don't think it's important, there's not really going to be any change, and that's kind of where we have been.
I want to go back to that idea that there's a limited pool. Julia, you had mentioned CEOs and CFOs. I'm looking at here on the terminal JP Morgan's management, the senior management, and of course the CFO at JP Morgan is Marianne Lake, and it has been brought up to us that perhaps the next CEO of JP Morgan could very well be a woman. She would also be a candidate to be a director on a company's board. Jeff, I wonder to what extent the financial services industry or any particular industry is a standout here when it comes to making sure there is a female representation on boards.
Well, in this study, in the last year, the tech companies actually came on strong. 40% of the candidates that went to boards for tech companies were women, which is up from like 14% the year before. So that's a pretty big gain. Business services companies do tend to lead in this area, as you're mentioning it. And CFO is one of the growth areas for women. So there is kind of that bright spot. And you also have more pressure from investors to try to get people to pay attention to this.